My name is Helena Carter. I'm 36 years old, a former military linguist. Though that title never meant much to my father. He called it translator tricks. Like I was a child playing at war. I hadn't seen him in years. Not since he blamed me for a mission failure that wasn't mine. Not since he let them suspend my clearance. And took credit for my silence. But there he was, 5 chairs down in the Pentagon war room, surrounded by stars and ribbons. Still proud. Still certain he knew best. I wasn't supposed to speak that day. No uniform. No rank. Just a quiet consultant. A woman with a strange set of ears. The room buzzed with tension. Satellite feeds lit the walls. Movements in Helmand province flashed like storms on a map. Intercepts in Pashto. Broken Farsi. Nothing clear. Everything urgent. Then the doors opened. General Matthews walked in. Coat crisp. Eyes sharp. He didn't waste time. Instead, he spoke. Not Arabic. Not Pashto. Not even Farsi. He spoke Dari. Not from textbooks. But tribal. Raw. A dialect I hadn't heard since a woman whispered it to me in a village. After pulling shrapnel from her son's leg. The words hit the air like stones. Baridar Marg Azgatar Miad. Brother, death comes from danger. No one moved. Not the analysts. Not the so-called experts. They looked around like the air had changed color. I didn't flinch. I answered calmly. Zinda mimanad agargush koned. He lives if he listens. Silence. Matthews leaned back. Eyes locked on mine. Then he said it. Quiet. Certain. She is Aegis. Even the air ducts seemed to stop. My father's face drained of color. And in that moment I realized, justice doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers. But that whisper was only the start. When I was 10, other kids signed up for ballet. I hid under my bed with a flashlight, copying Dari verbs from a grammar book I stole from my father's office. He never noticed. He rarely noticed anything I touched. Unless it was broken. At 11, I mimicked Pashto cadences. I loved the rhythm. But when he caught me, he scoffed. All that'll get you, he said, is a job typing for men who make real decisions. I swallowed the shame, and kept studying anyway. My mother was sick by then. She barely spoke. But one night, she watched me whisper a proverb into my pillow. When I turned, embarrassed, she said softly, "Whoever understands language understands war before it starts." It was the last full sentence she ever gave me. The hospital took her soon after. Silence filled the house. My father didn't talk much. And when he did, it wasn't to me. By 13, I was fluent in Dari, conversational in Pashto. But he called it obsessing. Said I should focus on real things. Every time he said I wasn't enough, I went back to my notebooks. Because language was the only place I didn't feel like a mistake. Years later, my brother Daniel was 22 when he deployed. He told me quietly, "I'm not ready, Hel." Our father overheard. He called it cowardice. Said Daniel had embarrassed the family long enough. 2 days later, Daniel signed the papers. 6 months in, a roadside bomb. Wrong time, wrong place. I read the debrief. I saw the inconsistencies. I flagged a mistranslation in the intercepts. The memo vanished. So did my clearance. At the funeral, our father stood tall in uniform. When people asked, he said Daniel wasn't strong enough. But I knew the truth. Daniel wasn't weak. He was unprepared, because someone refused to listen. Sometimes I still see his grin. Cracked sunglasses. Sunburned face. He was supposed to come home. But instead, I stood at his grave. My father silent beside me. And I learned the cruelest lesson of all. That silence kills louder than bullets. And yet the silence wasn't done with me. Not even close. After the board hearing, I vanished into a basement apartment outside Arlington. No ceremony, no calls. One day my badge worked. The next it didn't. I told myself silence was safer. But silence rots. It hollowed me out until I needed another fight. A nonprofit hired me to teach English to Afghan refugee kids. No clearance. No rank. Just patience. The classroom was a gym with flickering lights and folding chairs. Children clutched notebooks like life vests. Most had lost a parent. Some had lost both. Others just stared out the window, waiting for someone who would never return. I told them my name was Miss Carter, that I liked tea, that I read a lot. Sometimes I wrote a line of Rumi in Dari, then in English. The little ones thought it was magic. The older ones just nodded, as if they knew I wasn't reading a book. I was reading them. One boy, Mustafa 9, once asked, "Were you in the army?" I hesitated, then nodded. He studied me, then said, "You look like someone who doesn't yell." It was the best compliment I'd ever been given. 2 years passed. I taught verbs, colors, seasons. But more than that, I reminded them their voices mattered, even if no one listened yet. Still, late at night, I missed the other kind of purpose. The one where a single sentence could stop a convoy or save a life. Then came a Wednesday. The heater broke again. Kids wore mismatched hoodies, their breath fogging the air. My phone buzzed. Unknown DC number. I ignored it. It rang again and again. 3 times in 90 seconds. After class, I stepped outside and picked up on the 4th ring. Helena Carter, a man's voice said. Calm, low, commanding. Yes. I need 10 seconds. Then you can hang up. I didn't answer. Then he spoke. Not in English. In Dari. And not just Dari. Our old field code. Baridar Margatar Miad. Brother, death comes from danger. My breath caught. No one outside that base should have known those words. I swallowed. Who are you? Lieutenant General Langford, Pentagon. The world tilted. And in that moment, I knew. The silence was about to end. Miss Carter, the general said. Calm. Precise. I know what happened at that board. I know what they buried. And I know why they needed you gone. I froze against the brick wall outside the gym. Kids' laughter still drifted from inside, thin against the cold air. What are you talking about? His voice didn't waver. You were right about the intercepts. They weren't false. They were proof of a breach. Someone inside was leaking ops. The dismissal wasn't incompetence. It was a cover. My stomach dropped. 2 years I'd replayed that hearing, convinced I was the failure. Now he was cutting straight through the scar tissue. I whispered, Who? He didn't soften. Your brother-in-law, Major Reynolds. He funneled intel for cash. The board covered it to avoid scandal. Easier to burn one translator than admit treason in the family. The words hit harder than any mortar blast. Reynolds, the man who toasted me at Thanksgiving, who called me our little codebreaker, my sister's husband, my niece's father. I sank to the curb, phone shaking. You're saying I lost everything because of him? Not lost, Langford said quietly. Stolen. The air felt thinner, every memory sharpened. The way Reynolds lingered near my desk. The questions about comms. Casual. Too casual. I'd thought it was nothing. Now I knew better. My silence had been his victory lap. Why tell me now? I asked. Because he's still inside. And last week an op collapsed in Helmand. 6 dead. His fingerprints are on it. We can't move without testimony. We need someone who lived it. Someone he won't see coming. My mind flashed to Mustafa. To the kids in mismatched hoodies, breath fogging the gym air. 2 years of trying to erase myself. And now, realizing the war hadn't ended. It had only changed theaters. I whispered, You want me to testify? No, Langford said. I want you to fight back. For the first time in years, I didn't feel hollow. I felt heat. A rage sharp enough to cut through silence. Because if family had betrayed me, they were about to learn what betrayal really cost. The next weeks felt like suiting up again, but not with armor, with evidence. Langford's team slid me files, bank transfers, intercepted calls, timelines where Reynolds' business trips lined up perfectly with collapsed missions. Each page cut deeper, and each page gave me back something he thought he'd erased. But walking into that federal courtroom, it still rattled me. Rows of uniforms, reporters leaning forward, pens ready, the echo of boots against tile, loud as gunfire in that marble hall. And there, at the defense table, Reynolds, my sister beside him. She didn't look at me, didn't blink, as if I were already a ghost. When they called my name, I rose. The oath felt heavier than any rucksack. On the stand, I told them everything. The intercepts, the night I was silenced, the years I vanished, and how the leaks matched his movements, word for word, death for death. The prosecutor slid forward a photo. 6 soldiers, Helmand, faces now folded into black ribbons. Can you tell the court, he asked, how their location was compromised? My throat burned, but my voice stayed steady. By Reynolds. He sold them out. Gasps rippled through the room. Reporters scribbled faster. A juror covered her mouth. Reynolds shifted, jaw tight. For once, he had no smirk. Then his attorney lunged, voice sharp, accusing me of bitterness, of fabricating a grudge, of trying to settle family scores. I met his eyes. No grudge is worth 6 graves. The room went silent. So silent you could hear the tick of the clock. Even the judge leaned back, studying Reynolds as if weighing him on the spot. My sister finally looked at me, cold, accusing, like I was the traitor. Reynolds slammed a hand on the table. The bailiff barked at him to sit. But in that moment, the jury had already seen who he was. I didn't flinch. Not this time. When I stepped down, Langford gave the smallest nod. Approval without applause. The kind that says, mission accomplished. Reynolds knew then, The family pawn he'd erased from the board was back, and she'd flipped the game. But the verdict wasn't the end. It was only the beginning of what came next. The verdict came down swift. Guilty. 2 counts of espionage. 5 of treason. Reynolds didn't look at me as they cuffed him, but my sister did. Her eyes were glass. Hatred, sorrow, disbelief all fighting for space. I wanted to feel sorry for her, but then I remembered the faces in that photo. 6 soldiers who would never come home. I walked out of the courthouse into winter air sharp enough to cut. Reporters shouted questions. Microphones shoved toward me. I kept moving. What could I say? That justice feels heavy, not clean? That victory still leaves scars? At home, I found the old footlocker I'd shoved into a corner. Inside was the uniform I thought I'd buried. I didn't put it on, but I touched the fabric. For the first time in years, it didn't burn. Next day, I returned to the classroom. The heater still broken. The kids still bundled in 2 big coats. But when Mustafa raised his hand and asked, "Miss Carter, what's the hardest English word?" I smiled. I wrote one word on the board. Justice. They copied it carefully. Letters shaky but proud. And in that room, with chalk on my fingers and their voices filling the air, I finally felt lighter. Family can betray you. They can erase you. They can sell your silence and call it survival. But they don't get to write the last page. You do. So if you've been through something similar, if your own blood turned cold against you, know this: you are not alone. And silence is never the end. Have you ever had family turn justice into betrayal? Tell me in the comments, because sometimes the only way forward is to speak it out loud.